Well, good afternoon and welcome back finally to another vlog. I must apologise for the break that I've taken. It wasn't planned. I've just not felt motivated really. Life has thrown various things at me over the last month or so, and I've just not felt inspired to come out. Into the Easter holidays now, into the second week, and I feel a bit more inspired. So I hadn't actually checked. I knew the Bluebells would be coming out at some point, but obviously, as you can see behind me, that is what I would think I would like to be focusing on. Not primarily, but I think certainly at this location here. I'm in the local woods where I've come many times before on vlogs. But yeah, I think in this particular location I'm going to get the long lens out, and like I've done before, just try and shoot into the distance to just try and get that idea of the sea of purple colour. Not quite as abstract as previous images where I've shot through other bluebells to really blur it out. Just something really nice and simple and pretty. So, and at some point in this video, probably not for this shot, but I'm just going to talk you through a few of the settings that I use and just talk through the basics of the digital camera that I use, the DSLR, things such as aperture priority and that kind of thing. But yeah, let's get set up and see what we can find. Okay, so we are set up, and really with this kind of a shot where you're looking for the best looking specimen of the flower or whatever it is that you're shooting, which is the bluebell in this case, obviously I don't want to go into the bluebells to try and look for one. I think it's illegal to do that, they're protected. But also it would just be a horrible thing to go trampling through them just for the sake of one photograph for me. Very selfish behaviour. So what I tend to do is put the zoom lens on, and I'll just pan around and just shift my focus ring just to see what I can find, and just by chance really, it's just luck. But I've happened across a really nice cluster of bluebells on one sort of stalk. And they're just surrounded in the background, in the foreground, by the beautiful blue colours. I'm shooting it at f6.3, so which I think is the lowest for this lens, the widest aperture. Now that was giving me a shutter speed of about a 50th of a second, and because it's a bit breezy, to get sharp focus, I've upped the ISO, not ISO. I've learnt this from James Popsis. It's not an acronym. ISO. I've upped it to 400. Which raises my shutter speed up to 320th of a second, so it just captures it. And because I'm going to be talking about technical things a little bit in this video, to the extent that I understand them or know them, but for me, focus is the absolute highest priority in a photograph. If you get the exposure wrong, you can always adjust that. You can adjust your exposure if you're shooting in RAW. But if a photo is out of focus, you're ruined, you're screwed. So that's really important. I use back button focus on mine, and it's almost like a compulsive thing, especially if I'm shooting handheld. I'll press it 3 or 4 times before I take each shot, and take quite a few just to make sure I get at least one in focus. If you're seeing something special, especially if you're shooting people, taking pictures of people, not shooting people, shooting images of people, which I like to do at school and things like that where I work. And if you see something really magic happening, it's gutting if you then look at the image afterwards and it's not in focus. So focus is absolutely key. So that's why I've raised my ISO, which means the quality, there might be a bit of noise, not much, probably none, just to make sure that flower is pin sharp. So I'll take that now. There's just some beautiful soft light coming through, beautiful dappled light. I might just shoot another one as well, because I've noticed there's a stalk of flowers in front of it that's getting slightly better light. Just drop my composition down a bit. I mean, there's compositions everywhere in these, when you've got these beautiful fields of flowers like this. The sun's now gone in. Yeah, I'm going to wait for the sun to come back out to put some light on just that one group that were hanging down. But yeah, I'll show you both of those. Now, whenever I'm doing woodland photography, it's quite a simple concept to when I'm trying to find something to take a picture of, and that is basically looking for things that catch my eye, which I've said before, things that stand out. I've moved away from the bluebell part of this wood because it's so difficult. I'm sure other photographers will agree. And it's the same as when, you know, if you're shooting anything with an iPhone and you feel compelled to capture everything. And when there's bluebells everywhere, they're so beautiful. You're just like, oh my God, I've got to take lots of pictures. So I've pulled myself away and resisted taking any more pictures. I've got an idea for one that I would quite like with some bluebells just a bit further away. Something nice and symmetrical, like a nice line of them on a grass bank or something like that. But I don't need any more close-ups of them. But this has caught my eye, which is a tree. And it's an unusual shape, but the colour of it just stands out because it is white. Now we're surrounded by silver birch trees, and I presume that's what it is. But for whatever reason, it's got very few branches on it and very few markings. It's just very, very pale and a lot whiter than the other trees around it. So I've actually been waiting for the sun to go in, because when I walked past earlier and the sun was out, it lit up all the rest of the trees and this one didn't stand out. So it's also an unusual shape. So I'm going to get my camera set up, and then I'm just going to talk you through some of the technical things that I consider on my camera when I'm setting up and taking a shot. I appreciate a lot of people, or some people that watch this video won't need to know those things, but some people don't know as much, or are a more beginner stage to their photography journey. So I just thought I'd talk it through from my point of view. So yeah, let's get set up, see what we can do. Okay, so just while I'm waiting for the sun to go in, if I'll just show you, there you can see in the distance there, this white tree here that I'm shooting. You can see that it stands out, but not as much when the sun's on the other branches, on the other trunks, so I'm going to wait. But while I'm doing that, I'll just talk you through the camera. So I use the D7500, which is a Nikon, and I basically shoot in what's called aperture priority mode. I also tend to shoot a lot with the screen on the back, so I flick between these two. I can use the viewfinder to look at and set up my composition, but I tend to use the back of the camera more because it gives me a nice exposure meter on there that I can use. And basically that means if I'm at 0 there, if there's nothing above or below, it means it's correctly exposed. So on the dial, on the ring here, I don't know what you call it, the settings ring or something, but you'll notice there's these letters. So you've got auto, which is just if you want to shoot, point and shoot basically, and then you've got these different priorities at the top. So you've got manual at the top. Now if I put this in manual now you'll see at the moment I've got absolutely nothing there because it's completely overexposed because of the settings I've got at the bottom. So in manual, what I need to do is use my dials on here to adjust things. So I could take my aperture, make that much smaller to try and adjust my exposure, or I can use this ring at the top here, which adjusts my shutter speed, which is where it says in seconds there. Now because that shutter speed is way too long, that's why you can't see anything. So as I dial that in, you'll see the exposure come down to when it's at 0. That would be the right shutter speed with the aperture that I've got. But in manual, it won't adjust anything else. It only adjusts one thing at a time. So if I start putting up my f-stop up to 14 or 16, I'd then need to reduce my shutter speed to get things correctly exposed. So it changes things like that. So that's manual. We've then got aperture priority, shutter priority, and I can't remember what P stands for. Let's see what happens if we go on P. No, I have no idea. But basically I use aperture priority, which means the priority setting is going to be the aperture. So you'll notice as I adjust my aperture, my camera is adjusting the shutter speed so that it keeps the correct exposure. Now in light conditions like this, I can choose the shutter speed, the aperture that I want, which in this case is 5.6. The reason for that is because I've got all of this bracken and bramble in the foreground that I want to be blurred out. So I want that at 5.6, but if I wanted a higher aperture, if I wanted more of that in focus, you'll notice what that does is bring my shutter speed right down, which means my shutter is going to be open for longer and things that are moving aren't going to be in focus. So that's when I then need to use my ISO button at the top to just bring my ISO up, which just basically allows more light into the lens. And that's as basic as I can really make it, really. So yeah, I tend to shoot in aperture priority because it's the aperture that I think makes the biggest difference to the creative look of a shot, deciding how much is in focus. If I was shooting a sporting event or something like that, then I would probably go to shutter priority, which means I can then set the shutter speed, and it will adjust everything else. It will adjust the aperture to suit that, but I never really use that. The only other setting I've got is a preset there, which is on, I've put it on U2, so it's the first one that comes around, and I've got that set, if I just show you, to automatically have a minimum shutter speed of a 500th of a second, and that just means if I want to capture something quickly, especially if I'm shooting handheld, I'll use that just to make sure I get my subject in focus, even if it means adding a bit of noise to the image with a high ISO. So, but yeah, generally aperture priority, and I'll shoot looking through the back of the camera. So I'm just going to wait now until the sun goes behind a cloud, and then I will take this shot. I just think it, especially with a woodland scene when there's bright sunshine, it just makes it really sort of contrasty and horrible. So I could make it black and white, but I'm just going to wait and hopefully we'll get some softer light in a minute. So yeah, hopefully that covers just generally what these numbers mean on the back and the idea of this exposure meter having your image correctly exposed. So I will take that shot and show you that one, and then we'll move on. Okay, so I have found my last two compositions. One that I was set up with before, that I'm just waiting for the sunlight to go, so I'll talk you through that in a minute. But the second is a tree that I've found just in a clearing. I'm just talking a little bit quieter because it's definitely the busiest I've ever seen it at these woods today. I'm trying not to be annoyed at that or let the fact that people here annoy me, because that's really not fair. But it's what I love about this place, that I can come and film and talk and naturally and not worry about, because the minute someone walks past I just want to stop, even though it's probably pretty obvious I'm just making videos about photography, but still. Anyway, I was down on the floor shooting that composition, waiting again for the light to go because the direct sunlight is just not working, except in this composition that I found here. So I found this tree that's already quite gnarled and twisted and quite, I suppose, unpleasant looking in a way, but really interesting. But one of its branches is snapped down, so it's got a real look of sort of broken kind of anger to it, I suppose, that kind of thing. So yeah, it's not looking like it's a very happy tree, which, you know, the tree lover in me makes me sad that this tree's not happy, but I want to capture the emotions. That's my job. It's my hobby, it's not my job. I'm not paid for this. So the reason I like this at the moment is because actually with the direct sunlight, it's really highlighting parts of the bark. So I'm going to make it black and white and really moody looking, and to really bring out that tone of, as I say, kind of anger and brokenness. Brokenness, I think it's a word. The sun's about to go behind the clouds, so I should be able to get down and show you my next composition. So I'll take this one and let me know what you think. Angry tree. I've underexposed it slightly as well because of the sky, so hard to see exactly, but yeah, I think that's going to be pretty powerful. Okay, so for my last image, I've got down nice and low. I was walking past this dead branch that's obviously been there for a while, and it's just been starting to be taken over by nature. So where we've got a dead branch, there's new life sort of coming over the top of it, and the branch is obviously quite white and sort of light brown, kind of dull shades, and these lovely greens and things coming over the top. So I walked around it a few times and actually thought this isn't going to work at the moment, and from some angles there just wasn't enough of the sort of flowers coming out. Walked away and then looked from another angle, which is always worth doing, looking back behind you, and I've come around the side of it and I've found an angle that I actually really like. The issue I've got with it is focus, as always. When you're shooting something really close and sort of front on, so I've got the end of the branch towards the lens, it's about compromise really, and deciding what you want to be in focus and what you don't, and it's really hard with this one because there's some little white flowers on either side that would like to be in focus, but they're quite isolated. It would look a bit random because they're not the centre. It's actually this group of green plants that have taken over, and the actual branch itself isn't in focus either, which I'm not sure about, but I think it's okay. I think you can see the gist of what's happening. The other option would be to try and focus stack it, but from this close up, I think I'd have to take so many shots, and I'm just not technical or good enough to do that. So I think it will give a stylish look to it. It will look a little bit different, but yeah, see if you agree. The idea is that this is showing life, sort of taking back parts of the forest, if you like, reclaiming this dead branch. So yeah, that sounds really negative. It's meant to be quite a positive of life growing over the top of it, but you get my gist. That's why it caught my eye. So some nice images there, I hope. Thank you very much for watching. It's lovely to be back making videos again and being out. It feels good. So the subscribers have still slowly, just very slowly, gone up. So thank you if you subscribed and you've been waiting for a new video to come out. Welcome. As always, give me some feedback. Let me know if it's okay. And I hope the technical information was useful as well. Do let me know. I whizzed over some bits of that too quickly. I've got a tendency to do that. But yeah, thank you. Take care. Enjoy the rest of your Easter break if you're away. And I'll see you soon.